I'm one of those people who's like, there's this new, like Mel Robbins says, let them,
Yes,
I'm one of these people
I love
who's
that book.
Yeah, I'm really into that, right? I'm really into let them. I don't care. Whatever's good for you. And then I'm going to do me, right? I do have an opinion about sort of fame of celebrity versus craft, right? I talk to students about this all the time. It's a decision you make for yourself. And my personal decision always will have to do with craft. And I would rather be so successful in my work. I want to be successful. I'm not saying I always am. I will always strive to be better. But I know that I can be better and more believable and more truthful and honest when you can forget Kelli and lose yourself in Anna or Francesca or whoever it is that I'm trying, or Aurora or whoever it is. If you forget it's me, then I'm doing my job as an actor. However, as a celebrity, if I'm playing parts that are only seem sort of like me, I never really cease to be Kelli. And that, for me, where I come, my study, my education at Strasberg and back with Mrs. Birdwell and stuff, that wasn't what I meant to do. What I meant to do was go inside human nature, go inside other people's experiences and try to live in there and try to express them so that you, the audience, can feel like you're being told the truth and you lose yourself in the story. And so I do think we make a choice, and you can be a big star and you can also be an incredible actor. But the bigger celebrity you are, I think you lose a tiny bit of actorship.
Hey there, design enthusiast. Welcome to Inside the Design Studio, the podcast where we unravel threads of life and design. I'm your host, David Peck, your guide through the cosmic wonders, the tangible touches, and the delightful twists of creating a life you absolutely love. Today's episode is a special peek into my eclectic toolbox, the secret weapons I use to design a life that's as vibrant as my creations. So grab your metaphorical sketchpad and let's dive into the art of intentional living. Kelli O'Hara is a Tony Award-winning actress, a 6-time nominee, and one of Broadway's most celebrated leading ladies. She starred on Broadway in The King and I, The Light in the Piazza, South Pacific, Kiss Me Kate, just to name a few. But she's not just a stage star. She's conquered television too, most recently appearing in HBO's The Gilded Age, which just wrapped its 3rd season, proving once again that she can do it all. But beyond the accolades and standing ovations, what really interests me is how Kelli has designed a life she loves. How did a girl from Oklahoma end up taking Broadway by storm? What's it like moving to New York with no connections? How does she balance family, career, and the unexpected turns that come with both? We're going to talk about all of that and more. Her journey, the realities of Broadway and TV, breaking through industry stereotypes, and even a few fun behind-the-scenes stories. So let's dive in. Here's my conversation with the incomparable Kelli O'Hara. Kelli, let's take it all the way back to the very beginning. So when you were younger, did you always have dreams of theater or singing, or was it what got you to where you are now in the very beginning?
It's a good question because I didn't grow up around a lot of it. I didn't have any live theater. There was a small live theater called the Red Carpet Community Theater, and that's all there was. It was about as big as, a bedroom. And I remember my sister doing a little production of Annie there when we were tiny, and I didn't get to audition. I was too small. So it wasn't until I was about 10 that there was a talent show at school in the 5th grade. And if this tells you anything about how much I did not know about myself, I was trying to decide if I was going to sing or do a jazz dance that I choreographed myself. And I have zero talent in dancing. So thank goodness I chose to sing. And it was just, I sang That's What Friends Are For by Dionne Warwick because it was on the radio and I loved it. And I remember my mom saying, she's carrying a pitch there. And so after that, I started to seek out, she helped me seek out I didn't start taking voice lessons. It was more like this woman, Elaine Brunert, she would play Disney songs and I'd sing with her. And the real thing was I grew up watching movie musicals. That's what my mom loved showing me Sound of Music and Carousel and Oklahoma. And not to make this too long, but the very first memory I have of all of it, the only live thing I ever saw, I was 4, and Oklahoma used to do these Discoveryland all summer long performances of Oklahoma, as you can imagine.
Yeah. And
we had a family friend in it, and I went to see it, and I'll never forget it. And I remember begging to go on the stage after and go into the house, Ann Eller's house. And the girl said, I don't want you to because it's not what you think, and she thought I was going to be devastated.
Right.
I begged her and she let me go up the stairs and through the plywood door and then down the stairs again because it was just a fly, you know.
Right.
And she thought I was going to be sad. And I remember thinking, that is amazing. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, I loved the magic that I thought there was a house in there, but really it was just a set piece that you walk right back onto the floor. And I was hooked. I was hooked. And so then I watched the movie musicals and then I finally tried to sing when I was 10 and that's where it started.
I love that. I love that the magic of the behind the scenes and creating that illusion is what captured you from the very beginning. So you ended up studying opera and voice in college. Was there a teacher or somebody who helped direct you along that path, or how did you know that was even a possibility?
Well, that's another really fortuitous thing that happened. In 1981, I'm aging myself. I was born in 1976. I was 5 years old, and Miss America that year was a woman named Susan Powell. And Susan Powell was from my very small town of Elk City, Oklahoma. In fact, anytime I did anything creative, I did it in the Susan Powell Auditorium. And she had come back to visit that year to like make an appearance in her auditorium. And the whole town was just all aghast, you know. And I remember she sang an aria or some sort of she was an opera singer. And I remember learning that she had gone to Oklahoma City University and studied with a woman named Florence Birdwell. And in that moment, my mom says, now I don't remember it that well. She says, you made a decision to go learn to sing from the Bird Lady. I called her the Bird. And even though I never tried to sing after that until I was 10, and then I sang through junior high and high school, I never stopped thinking, I'll go to OCU and sing with Florence Birdwell.
Yeah.
Thank goodness I could sing it all because then I was able to. And she really changed my life. That woman became my whole life mentor at that point.
You famously share her with Kristen Chenoweth, is that right?
That's right. And many others. But because of Kristen, because Kristen had been there before I was and was already getting her feet on the ground in New York by the time I got there. So it was like this constant example of somebody who's making it work, you know. So that was really exciting.
I think it's so important for people who come from, because you come from not a super urban city, you know, you're not coming from LA or New York or Chicago even, to have those people as sort of guideposts, like they've made it or they've done something, they came from where I came from and they were able to create this life. I think it's so important to have those examples.
It only takes one, David. I mean, and that's the special thing, you know, when I think about Elk City now, I think I had a scholarship for a while in the high school, you know, thinking to myself, if there's one person who likes this idea, who has this dream, and everybody around you kind of thinks you're crazy, because that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I want them to be championed. You know, I want them to know that it's not a worthless dream. You know, it can really work out. And I know there are kids there and they find their people and they find their way and then they dream big.
Yeah. And were you taking voice lessons in high school, or was it really what you were doing through school that kind of prepared you to audition for OC?
Well, by the time I think I was a freshman in high school or maybe an eighth grader or a freshman. There was another woman in town that was a singer and she taught voice. Her name was Juanita Wam. And she was married to Don Wam.
I love that.
And she was fabulous. I've always thought to myself, I'm letting all the voice teachers of the world down by not being more fabulous. Like, you know, Mrs. Birdwell was too. She had the scarves and the whole thing. But Juanita Wam was fabulous. And she wore wigs, you know, jet black wigs all the way to the end of her life. And she taught beautiful voice lessons. And then as I got into choir and voice competition and things like that. But then a crazy thing happened. My dad, his career changed. And as a junior in high school, I had to move everything that I had known, all my friends. We moved to Oklahoma City, to Edmond, right north of Oklahoma City. And one of the reasons he enticed me, because I was like, I'm not going, hell no, you know, I'll live with grandma, was that he knew he was going to start practicing law with a man whose wife was had been a Birdwell student.
Oh my goodness.
And he said, you can take voice lessons with Diane Ball. And I said, well, I'm in. And we moved up there and she was a wonderful teacher. And she led me right to that audition with Florence Birdwell when I was a senior to get into college. And it all seemed like it was pre-planned.
Yeah,
you know?
It was meant to be. The stars aligned. So you ended up moving to New York. And from what I understand, you didn't really have any connections. Maybe you had the idea of Kristen, but like, what made you think, okay, New York, here I come? Did you know you wanted to pursue Broadway? Was it voice? Like, what was it at that point that was the impetus for going from Oklahoma to New York?
Well, let me just say, I don't want to forget to say this. I had one champion, and that was Kristen. when I was a senior in college, and I had already decided to move to New York, and I want to address that. She rented a studio, paid for it, and got her agency at the time, 2 guys, to come sit in the room. And she let Mrs. Birdwell bring 12 students on spring break. We didn't have a showcase. Now colleges have a showcase where they come and they bring their seniors, and they have casting directors and producers and people come and agents. We didn't have that at all. And Kristen did this for us. And out of that, they chose 2 of us to sign. And I got my agent. Because now I cannot, that was just that's why I'm here, because otherwise I would have gotten up there and just been flailing about and not had any way. I would go to open calls, but it really is harder without an agent.
Yeah.
But I also want to say that one of the things that's great about being naive and growing up where I did and not having examples and not having it all around me all the time, even at college, was that I just imagined it a possibility as opposed to thinking of all the reasons why it wouldn't work. I just assumed it would. And when I decided that I wouldn't go to grad school for opera, but I would move to New York and go to acting school and try to get Broadway, I thought, shoot, I can do this. I'll do this. I'll just move up there. And I didn't have a place to live. I had a couple of girlfriends that we had done summer stock together. And we said, we were like, just let's go, let's try this. And like looking back, even though there were a lot of hard times and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of just ramen noodles or whatever, I'm so proud of that. I'm proud that I didn't have it all set up, but I'm also proud that I didn't know a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my first big jobs, my first role on Broadway, comes by the fact that I didn't know anything. And it actually worked in my favor.
So what was that? How did you end up with that first job?
It was just, I've told this story. It was just a show. It was called Sweet Smell of Success. Marvin Hamlish wrote it. It was John Lithgow and Brian Darcy James. And I didn't know who Marvin Hamlish was when I went into the room. I had no idea. I was so ballsy. I banged on the door. I didn't have an audition. I didn't have a slot. I didn't have an appointment. I begged them to see me. The pianist had gone to lunch. Marvin was there eating his lunch. He said, I'll play for you. And I was like, you're fine. You'll do. And he loved that. He would tell that story. He was like, she didn't know anything. And we loved it. It was perfect for the role. I was a little bit forward because I was in a rush because I had to get back to rehearsals for Follies. And because of all that, I walked away with them thinking, that's fresh, that's fresh. And I think that's what happened, as they've told me since. And I got the job. And I'm glad that instead of feeling stupid about that, because Marvin became a dear friend of mine over the years before he passed, I feel really proud that it made me bold. Yeah.
You had grit,
I guess.
Yeah. I have a former life as a classical cellist, so I kind of understand that the whole audition process and kind of the nerve-wracking, and you don't know what you don't know until you get in the room, and there's these people who are really important, and then you don't find out until later, and it's a lot of stuff to carry. So did you have other jobs while you were trying to make it and auditioning when that kind of helped sustain you through? Did you wait tables or any of the stereotypical things that people do to kind of make ends meet in New York?
Right when I got there, I had a lead on a temp agency, and they were going to pay $15 an hour. And this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I got this first job at the Cafe Carlisle. I had no idea what it was, which of course now I've worked there a couple times. And now I look back, Barbara Cook was playing that week. She was in the hotel playing.
Oh,
and
wow.
The only good thing that happened was I was working in the booking office, and it was terrible. I was terrible. The guy running the place was terrible. I didn't know who anybody, don't you know who they are? I had no idea.
Yeah.
He called down a couple of times to ask questions or, request something in her hotel room or whatever. And that was the best part of it, because that was the first week I moved to New York. But on the Monday after I first had that job, I got an audition for a non-equity part somewhere. And I got that job. I had to leave. So I had to quit my temp job at the Cafe Carlisle. And I know that's unusual and I never take it for granted, but it was one of those little musicals, Something's Afoot, in Sugarloaf, New York. And I wore my lavender business suit that I'd worn in the Miss OCU pageant the year before. And I marched in with my character heels on. And again, the part was right for the person thought that I was trying to be. And I got that job, and it was my first theatrical role and job. And there's a wonderful music director who is Kristen Chenoweth's right-hand lady. Her name is Mary Mitchell Campbell. She runs City Center Encore's orchestra. She was the audition pianist that day. And so all these years later, we see each other, and she's like, I remember you when you were that girl. And But it's a small world. And I did get that job. And from then I started working. So I got pretty lucky that way.
Yeah, that's really fortunate. So in thinking, I mean, you've had so many different roles on Broadway, but you've also made this big transition, to TV movies, like the film. How do you prepare yourself differently for a stage role versus something that's going to be filmed?
A great question. I think that the real big difference is that in theater, you're on a journey that starts and finishes.
Yeah.
And in television and film, well, film is more like that. But in television, especially, it's moments. You're playing moments, and moments that are out of your hand, really, once the director and the editor get together and just pick how to express the moment. You just have to give your best effort. I definitely know about all the normal 101 actor criteria of the time, era that we're in, her background, whatever I need to know about this person that I want to portray. And with theater, for me, I always go back to the source material. If it was based on a book, I don't usually ever watch another production of it, another person's portrayal. It just doesn't, it's not helpful because I'm not that person. Like, I can't be Julie Andrews, so I better just start from scratch.
Right.
Kelli, so that's very important. And in television and film, you're often never trying to repeat someone else's performance. So it's almost like you try to bring even more sort of yourself into what's going on, so the natural qualities can come through as you're playing it. The preparation is basically the same, but then the moment that you're doing it's very different. I think of theater as this sort of little bit of a holler, and television is more of a whisper, but it's all truth. It doesn't change your truth and your desire to communicate honestly. It just happens to be a little bit more different. The genres they ask different muscles of you.
Right. Was it hard to make that transition in terms of technique from stage to film, or like how did you learn how to act on film versus on stage? Because they while they're related, they have, as you said, very different.
They do. It's a great question that people really are curious about, and I worried it when I first started dipping my toe into like little television parts. And I think you learn as you go because you realize, you see the playback, or that's the other thing. It's a very self-conscious medium if you see it. Whereas theater, you're just in it, completely alive in it. It's why I'll always love it. But when I went to do opera, it's a third change. You don't even look at you're just fourth wall, all presence. So it's very a presentational art form. Theater, you can get a little closer, but still you're opening up. The intimacy of television and film is something that you really go to. Again, that's why I repeat, you bring so much of your own true self, because it is a very vulnerably close art form. And just like I'm talking to you right now, I'm not going to, I could be that way.
Yeah.
I could be like Lawrence Birdwell, but it's more of it depends on who you're doing. In fact, I was just putting myself on tape for something yesterday, and she was a bit stylized, this character. She was Southern, and she was and I was digging into it, and my husband was reading it with me. He's like, okay, all right, no theater. Remember, it's and you remember everything is that camera, depending on the lenses and where you are, it can pick up the tiniest of emotion, even the, just your eyes. You don't even have to do anything. So I was working on a project for over a period of 8 years, if you can believe it, which was one of the neatest things I ever got to do, called The Accidental Wolf.
Yes.
My friend Arian Moyad wrote and directed it. And it was like I went to a school. In that time, he would, because we were good friends, he could say to me, I'm right here, smaller, bring it in. The shot, he would show me, he would turn the monitor around. He'd say, the shot's here. So give me nothing except inside, right? And then, if he used a long lens, or, if he was using a wider take, he'd say, all right, he taught me about that kind of thing. And it was basically like I got a free education while shooting something, as opposed to showing up on a set and worrying that I was wrong, for all the professionals and experts there.
Yes.
We more or less did it together, and he was teaching me as I went.
That's really amazing to have somebody who's able to like walk you through the process and also give you that sense of comfort that it's okay to learn.
Yes.
Through that.
Yes.
That's really special. Is there something about being on Broadway that people tend to romanticize? Because I know 8 shows a week is no joke. And it's physically exhausting, emotionally exhausting. You're kind of putting yourself out there every night. But is there sort of like a common misconception that people have about what it's like to actually star in a Broadway show? Because you've done quite a few at this time.
Yeah, no, I do think that we don't want to glorify it's not as glamorous as you think. And I do think in this age we're in right now where everybody has a platform and everybody's a star.
Right.
I do think Broadway feels like it's getting a little bit more glamorous. I mean, we have now the Tonys are more of a red carpet event than they ever were before. By and large, you used to see theater actors walking around in their jeans and sweats or whatever. And now it's sort of like, oh, there's a Hollywood aspect to Broadway that seems really fancy. But at the end of the day, we're still going in 8 shows a week, living like nuns, looking terrible most of the time because we're exhausted, and showing up and doing this work. And so I think the art form itself is really special that way and asks a lot more. I really do. I always say it's a little bit like being a professional athlete, except we don't get off season or holidays or weekends or whatever. You just go through and you do it. And I think for adrenaline junkies like myself, it is the best kind of work because you feel so thoroughly wrenched out. You feel like you've done a great yoga class and you're just so calm after. But I often say this, that Broadway people, and because I'm one of them, we can't get too big in our heads because we aren't stars. We are in a certain group of fans, right? Yeah. But the great thing about our work is that it is something that you have to come and be with us in a small moment to have the feeling of it. It's not something, even though there's filmed Broadway, people film it and it's different. It's not in everybody's living room. You have to come. Anybody, if we start to feel, I'm famous, I'm a big star. I think back when I did the Peter Pan live at NBC.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Christian Borle, who played Shmi. He had just done the year before, he had done the Sound of Music one.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yes. And he said they did the numbers on those things. And it would have taken a Broadway show, a huge one, in, say, the Gershwin, which is the biggest house. It's like 2,500 seats or something like that. I don't know. To do that show, Sound of Music, in the Gershwin, 8 shows a week, 100% sold out for 15 years, have the same audience that it had that night that it played on NBC. And so when you think about that, you think about how few people are seeing you every night you do a Broadway show. But you think about how special that few people are because it's this weird gem of a moment that it's not for everybody. It's for those who have dedicated that time together. And that's what makes it so special. And that's why I think it won't ever disappear, even as we put ourselves across the world in platforms.
Right.
It is this moment that you can't just have. Right. You have to go get it. You kind of have to work for it. You have to pay the money because it's so expensive. You have to travel there. You have to. So it's this little offering that's just not like anything else.
And it's different every night.
And it's different. Never did the same show. I would come to the theater with a flu. I would come to the theater, pregnant a lot of times, or totally distraught by something terrible happening in my family, or whatever it was. You bring it, and then that audience feeds you in this weird way. And then you start to have this interchange and this exchange with each other that's emotional and raw. And every night I would be lifted out of whatever that was. But I would use different aspects. Like some nights my shows were a little weepy. Some nights my shows were like super energetic. And that really had to do with the audience.
Yeah. Do you feel like now that you've been on a show like the Gilded Age, which has quite a large presence, I think, in both pop culture, and I think there's so many Broadway alums on that show, has that changed your relationship to the public or more people recognizing you? And does it give you pause, or has it not really changed that much? Can you disappear, I guess, as much into your roles as you feel like you maybe were before?
Well, that's a great question because I want to say that I'm one of those people who's like, there's this new, like Mel Robbins says, let them,
Yes,
I'm one of these people
I love that book.
Yeah, I'm really into that, right? I'm really into let them. I don't care. Whatever's good for you. And then I'm going to do me, right? I do have an opinion about sort of fame of celebrity versus craft, right? I talk to students about this all the time. It's a decision you make for yourself. And my personal decision always will have to do with craft. And I would rather be so successful in my work. I want to be successful. I'm not saying I always am. I will always strive to be better. But I know that I can be better and more believable and more truthful and honest when you can forget Kelli and lose yourself in Anna or Francesca or whoever it is that I'm trying, or Aurora or whoever it is. If you forget it's me, then I'm doing my job as an actor. However, as a celebrity, if I'm playing parts that are only seem sort of like me, I never really cease to be Kelli. And that, for me, where I come, my study, my education at Strasberg and back with Mrs. Birdwell and stuff, that wasn't what I meant to do. What I meant to do was go inside human nature, go inside other people's experiences and try to live in there and try to express them so that you, the audience, can feel like you're being told the truth and you lose yourself in the story. And so I do think we make a choice, and you can be a big star and you can also be an incredible actor. But the bigger celebrity you are, I think you lose a tiny bit of actorship.
Yeah.
Only just by nature of the fact that you can't forget the person.
Right.
And I'm at a certain level where the reason why bigger fame for me would help is because it would allow me to do more of the plays and things that I'd like to dive into.
Right.
That's the give and take. It's like, it's the pressure these days, especially on an actor, to be a bigger social media presence or whatever it is, because then you'll get hired to do the play you wanted to do, right? Because you can sell tickets. It's a commercial entity.
Right.
But if I just want to go do like my dream role, I should just go do it here at the Playhouse, and that's a fantastic way to do it because I just want to do the work. But if I wanted to do it in film or on Broadway, I do have to strive to meet a certain celebrity quota.
Right.
And then you sort of have to sit down and decide with yourself, do I want to do that? And am I making a living well enough, or should I pump that up so that I can get bigger, bolder, more paying, more celebrity jobs? So it's a constant grapple because I guess I do have a bit of a introvertedness to me that I don't think I realized as much until maybe the pandemic. But do I want my kids to be safe and private? Yeah. Do I want to not be able to go to, the grocery store? Yeah, I want to go. I like to food shop. So but do I want to have all those perks of being, and then being able to pick my show? Yeah. I want to work and I want to do really great things. So it's always a juggle. I'm not saying I have the answers or I'm always peaceful in it. I'm saying it's a struggle.
Do you have people around you that you feel help keep you grounded when you're making those decisions?
Oh, yeah. It's why my partner, my marriage is, my husband grew up in this business with a father that he was in this business. He ran a theater company. He's still an artist. He's a singer-songwriter, filmmaker, but his dad was in a very similar work, genre as I am. And he watched it all. He watched those decisions being made. He watched his dad not take a huge television show in LA one time so that he could move back to Connecticut and coach Little League.
Yeah.
He remembers those choices because he's the result of what those choices, were. He's the kid who had the dad who was coaching his Little League team instead of being gone all the time. Now, I don't know how his dad feels about that necessarily now, although he loves his family so much. And I think he's proud of this decision. And he went on after that to win 2 Tony Awards. So he's okay.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a tough thing because would he have been a huge star? Yeah, probably. But he made that choice. Have I made some hard decisions that would have definitely changed my life? Yes. But do I regret them? Watching my kids right now being, doing really well and trusting that their mom is here. Yes, I'm proud of that. Is it hard? Yes. Do I think, I wish I could just be all over the world taking the jobs that, would. But, you make those choices and then you live with them. And I think as long as I know that I'm balancing as well as I can, not always succeeding greatly, but my partner, my husband and I, we really do weigh every choice we make together. We're like, would this be okay? Could we make this work? Is this going to be, and there've been, especially in the last few years, because I've not done quite as much theater.
Right.
Because of my kids, there've been some jobs that I really am sad that I couldn't do, to be honest. And it was so funny because there was a very important job to me that I had done all the workshops for. And I decided not to take it because of my kids, because I knew I was going to be doing Days of Wine and Roses in this. And it was when my son said, Mom, you have to do it. I won't let you not do it.
Aw.
That I decided not to do it because I think he's that way. I think he doesn't resent me yet, quite yet for being a busy working mom, because I have made some sacrifices work-wise. Right. And I think my kids know that. And I think until he says, you're never around, then we'll see. But when he said that, I thought, no, we're doing it right. So I'm going to go ahead and make the choice I know is right in my head, which is not to do it.
Right.
And it worked, and it worked out because I don't regret it too much.
I think that I've been thinking a lot about my life lately and like little choices that I've made throughout the years that could have potentially taken me down a different path. And there's always a little bit of regret or a what if. But then there's also when you step back and look, you're like, but I wouldn't have had these other opportunities. I wouldn't have made these other choices had I followed, or you find out more information. Like I was actually saved from, like something that could have been really upsetting or whatever, because I didn't make that choice, but at the time didn't feel like it was there. And so it's nice that you're able to find that perspective a little bit closer to the decision. That's not always easy.
There's always reasons to find. You can always find the negative if you're looking for it. Like I can easily say, if I had taken that job, then, but I think the better way is you'll always find the reasons why it's pretty okay that you didn't do it. You know what I mean? You always find the positives in that too. I think I have to look, we're both artists. We've had to look at it that way, which is to say, I actually heard something just recently, Kieran Culkin, who's just going to win an Oscar or something, but he said something very interesting, which really, he said, he was talking with Jesse Eisenberg and Jesse was saying, you're not competitive at all. You said, that's an alien idea to me. And Kieran was like, no, I don't. He said something that I think I believe, which is, yes, does it hurt when you don't get a part, for instance? Yes. But I think I was taught to believe that, well, that's not for me. I just wasn't the right person for that. But see, I'm the right person for this. And I've been the right person for many, many, many things. So in a way, there is no competition because we're playing people, right? So you're either the person or you're not. Like you're either, even as an actor, you're either the person to play the person or you're not. And so he was saying that. He was like, all I think about auditions is, well, if I get it, I was the person to play the person. But if I don't get it, then that means they were the person to play the person. And so it doesn't feel like a competition. It feels just like a black and white thing.
Right.
And I know that sounds easier than it is because there's lots of factors that go in, and lots of times people that got it weren't necessarily right. But I like to think of it that way because when I don't get something, I can often see why I didn't after the fact. And then usually something comes up that I do instead. And I'm like, oh, that's why I didn't get the, you know what I mean? It was, I remember back in the day, I auditioned for Wicked 8 times. I had 8 callbacks for Nessa Rose in the wheelchair because Kristen and Adina were already doing the parts. And I remember just being like, it would be with Kristen and I want to do it and it's going to be a big deal. And I was coaching, it's like 2 small scenes, but I was like coaching and having, da-da-da-da-da. I didn't end up getting it, obviously, but it was the same year that Light in the Piazza was gonna, you know what I mean? It's like, I look back and I'm like, what if I had taken Nessa Rose and I didn't even know or chose it over Piazza because Piazza was out of town and it wasn't a big deal at the time. And it was a brand new, who knew what that was going to be. But what if I had not been free to take it? And so I look back on those times and I go, we just have to trust. We just have to trust that it happens the way it's going to happen,
Right. How do you keep that trust growing? Because I think it's easier in hindsight to be like, oh yeah, I trusted that it'd work out and it did. Yay, great. But I think so many times, especially creative people, endless possibilities. And you feel like you can, in many ways, like do anything because you're creative. But there's that uncertainty that kind of lives within you because there are so many possibilities. And you're like, did I make the right choice? Did I choose the right thing? Did I, not go after Nessa Rose because I'm doing this thing that seems inconsequential, but then ends up being this huge moment in my career. But when you're going through it, it's not so clear cut or black and white. Is there anything that you do to kind of calm yourself down or give yourself peace? I mean, maybe with time and perspective after doing it so many years that it kind of comes a little bit more naturally, but is there a practice that you have that helps you get there?
It's such a great question because I was just listening to something last night where Audra had said she was going through this time where the voices in our heads, right? The voices in our heads just get loud. And she was going through a time when hers was very loud. And she was basically like, all right, I need you to be quiet now. Did I make the right choice? Oh, I'm terrible. Is my career over? Whatever it is. And I definitely feel that it's very often, whether it be, I have this new mantra when I'm on stage, when I have this sort of anxiety of like, do I remember what are my lyrics? Where I do have this sort of conversation with myself, which is, I'm in charge. You be quiet. I know my stuff. I'm going to be fine. And if you kind of mind over matter it usually, and I'm going to say it almost always works for me. For me, it does. It actually, if I change the narrative from, oh my God, you're going to mess up, to, I got this, you need to be quiet, I'm in charge, and then it does. I feel like it's the same with these moments where you don't quite know how it's all going to turn out, but right now it feels kind of sucky, and with wisdom, with the experience of looking back on those things, David, and knowing that oftentimes things worked out. I mean, they always did because I'm still standing, I'm still here. But it is that wisdom of saying to myself in those moments when I naturally boil up with, but this is different because I'm getting older and women in the business, they crash and there's no more for me. My career's, then I go, you know what? You're going to be looking back in a few months, having been busy with a bunch of stuff that's already there that you're not even thinking about. You're going to feel really good about where, it's going to be okay. Something's going to come up that's really exciting. I can even sabotage the fact that I do have stuff coming up and I'm very busy. I can sabotage all of that for one specific loss,
Mm-hmm.
I do have that ability to stop and say, just give it some time and you'll feel very differently. For me, it can be by the day or by the week. I'll admit just right now, I was just the other day, I was like, why are you feeling a little, stilted or like down? You were just in LA, you had this great, the Grammy, you had a great time. And I'm not judging. I don't want to judge myself, but I want to remind myself, enjoy the rest, because I couldn't when I was younger. I was so anxious about it. And so I say, enjoy this rest because it's going to get really busy again, and enjoy that rest. And it's just a conversation where when I say that to myself, I do have stuff to back it up from the experience of it before. Will there ever be a time that if I really was honest with myself, that I'll just never, it'll all dry up and I'll never get work again. I'll never be asked to sing at anything ever again. No, that's not going to happen. I'll sing at someone's wedding. You know what I mean? It's like, or hopefully, or someone's funeral. Or so when I get that way, I should just, tell myself, hey, and it's a conversation that constantly happens and there's no answer for it. It's just like anything else. When you go online and someone's like, I finally found the answer to everything. You know what I mean? Or like, when I started doing this, everything changed. That's not how we work. And that's not how they work. It's just, we do this, right? We do this. We do this with our weight. We do this with our careers. We do this with our relationship. You go through times so that you can have this one. And then you go through this so that you can have this one. And that's where you have to go. Wait until you're on the upswing again and relax.
Yeah. I feel like, and maybe this, I don't know if you've thought about it this way, but you've also diversified your career quite a bit. You started in theater, musical theater, but you've now since done obviously film, television, but also gone back and the reason you were in LA for the Grammys was because of the hours, the opera.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got like these different, they're all related obviously because they relate to who you are as a performer, but there are different ways of people seeing you. Does that feel any more comforting in thinking about wading through those highs and lows, because it doesn't feel like I only have to get the next TV job or the next theater gig or the next, you're not just looking to be that one opera star. You've been able to kind of go across genres a little bit. Does that feel more comforting or does it feel like a lot more work?
No, it's not more. I mean, for me, I do. I just want to try everything. I mean, it probably doesn't seem that way, but to me, in my little heart of hearts, I feel like I risk take, because I want to say, put me in an improv. I would be terrible at improv, but put me on SNL and I follow my face, but I don't care. I want to try,
Right.
Or, throw me on the Metropolitan Opera stage. And I don't mean to sound light about it. I mean, I worked very hard to try to do that. I guess I'm very proud of myself for having tried those things. I'm looking for what the next thing is. I'm trying to figure that out. But I will say that by spreading yourself out a little bit, I guess there's the concern sometimes that you haven't then continued to be doing in this one spot. For instance, when I go do an opera or I go into a Broadway show, I stop auditioning for television. In fact, I didn't really audition for television for about 8 years because I couldn't. I didn't have how can I take a television job if I'm doing 8 shows a week,
Right.
And then when I went into the opera, I can't really go do my own concerts because it's a different voice, in a way.
Right.
So I put things aside a bit in order to do the one. And in that way, I guess I could get in my head and say, you're spreading yourself thin. And then in another way, I'm like, but I'm an artist. So aren't I just making it thicker and, adding layers? And I think it's the latter. I want to believe it is, because when it all comes down to it, and as I find newer and more interesting projects as I go along, I have all those experiences to kind of add to. So whether I'm doing television or film or concerts or opera or whatever, I'm living on top of all that experience and knowing different communities. I mean, I just want to do more of it, I just want to keep expanding.
Is there a danger of feeling typecast, and does that enter your mind too? And maybe perhaps like having always challenging yourself to try something new kind of keeps you from how people want to perceive you and not growing?
Yeah, no, it's exactly what it is. I mean, I feel it's amazing the comments you'll get from people that go, and you go, oh, I didn't know that I was giving that. You know what I mean? It's like, I thought, I know who I am, and I know how I live my everyday life, which is, but then I'll have a comment like, I think I was doing a concert one night, and in my solo concerts, I tell stories, I sing songs that I wrote. There's a couple of funny ones, I curse, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And this woman came up to me afterwards and she was like, that was so surprising. I just thought, it was very awkward too, this conversation. She was like, I just thought you were like Mary Poppins or something. I didn't know. And, you think to yourself, have I been giving, or the other good one is like getting an offer to be on like the Housewives of New York or something like that.
Right.
Really would be a perfect fit. And I'm like, really? Is that what I'm giving up? Because you don't see me most of the time. Like, I'm like, do you want to give me a $50 million apartment? Because you don't, it's not my existence. I'm a theater actor.
Yeah, and glam every day.
Yeah, I'm most of the time in my ponytail trying to get my kids to the bus in my Uggs and sweat or my pajama pants. I just think that it's this misconception that we have of everybody. And I do it too. I'll see someone who does, like, I remember when I saw Lady Gaga, forget it. I remember when I saw her step in and do all the Julie Andrews singing at the Oscars that year. And I remember I was like, you just won me. Not because she did Julie, she could have done a different genre.
Right.
But what I saw was she was the real deal. But in order to get to be there, to show that she has all this other talent, she came out in this as this caricature of something, and she still does it because her fashion and her style and her larger than life thing is who she is. I mean, Barbra Streisand was that way. She dressed, she designed herself. She would go to vintage shops and that is what some people do. And it can seem like a crutch, like I'm going to be famous because you won't forget how I look. But then they take off all their makeup and then just sing. And you're like, okay, I'm in, or it's like I can think of many examples of how someone's doing one thing and then they show you another side of them and how surprised I've been. And I really should slap my wrist for that. It's like, nobody is one thing, but like, I remember learning that Cyndi Lauper was not a weep bop singer, that she's one of the best blues singers that we have in this, like she's raw and she has one of the best voices you've ever, but to be famous in the 80s, the record labels like sing like girls just want to have fun. And so you have to remember, and I do deeply, that we are multi-layered, but we take the jobs we can get. We need to make a living. And so I love playing Rodgers and Hammerstein. I've loved doing the revivals. I've loved all of that. And that is part of me. But I also am a grown woman who has a backbone and a lot of opinions, politically and otherwise. And I want, and being taken seriously is important to me because, there is a world in which that has not always happened. And so I believe that in order to constantly show that side, you do have to reinvent. I mean, I could keep defending the legacy of being an ingenue. I could try to do a lot of things to my face that won't work. And I could keep singing only in one way, but it would be so boring and not representative of who I am, So we have to keep working on that,
Yeah. I think it's constant work because we whether we know it or not, we're constantly marketing ourselves, and so it works and people tend to see you, but you're a fully functioning human being, and you have multitudes, and a lot of times it's hard for people to understand the complexity that it is to be human. They want to put you in the box that they first found you, and sometimes you're able to more successfully than others break out of that box, but sometimes it feels like it's an uphill battle. Do you feel like, I don't know, the world feels like it's in such a chaotic state right now. Does it feel more uncertain charting that path and figuring out how to have a voice that feels authentic to you while also being a public figure and also, taking on these roles that challenge you? The mix of all that could be quite challenging. I find it challenging to kind of be my true, authentic self and say what I really believe in a way that feels both compassionate and empathetic, but doesn't alienate people. I mean, maybe alienating people is an okay thing to do, but how do you find that the mix of that now? Does it feel especially challenging?
Oh, it's very challenging. It's an extremely challenging thing, because then it also goes back to, if you're a public figure in any level, what is your responsibility, right? But it goes back to the idea of celebrity versus craft. I became a tiny public figure. And, we talked about this, I'm a theater person, but but I did it only because I want to work in the theater. Mm-hmm. I want to act. I didn't ask to be, a politician or an advocate. There are definitely places where I have become an advocate, because an activist, advocate of certain ideas and beliefs, and an activist in those areas, because it's so important to me as a person outside of work, outside of being an actor, that it's going to affect my children. It's going to affect my family. It's going to affect the art form in general. Arts being not a commercial enterprise, but arts being a thing that every human needs, what are we going to do about that? But so many other subject matters. And so what I'm not willing to take part in is the vitriol. And I when you say like silence is part of the acceptance of it, because you're not on social media sometimes, and sometimes I am, I pick and choose. It doesn't mean you're not doing something. In fact, I argue that sometimes you're doing a lot more if you're doing something with your community, with your, making connection, reaching out, trying to be involved in something that's helping something, instead of sitting on and having a fight with someone who you'll never be able to reach each other that way.
Right.
I've thought long and hard about sitting down with people I really love and respect, and have grown up my whole life with, and saying, please just make me understand. I feel like I've been in a bit of a twilight zone for a while now.
Yeah.
I admit that the morning has been I did an unfortunate deep dive with the news.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it just happens because...
Yeah.
But it's more of the concern of like humanity, really. That's what, and I called my dad, who thankfully, growing up where I grew up, but my parents and my siblings and stuff, they feel really sound to me. And that is so important to me, because it is my foundation.
Yeah.
About, I don't understand. When you taught me, and my surroundings taught me about humility, humanity, kindness, love, allowance, acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
I feel sometimes I'm just confused.
Yeah.
And so do I want to get on social media? Because if I could reach more people, do I want to get on there and just sometimes scream? But is that going to do anything, as opposed to maybe sitting down and having these conversations, which I've had at times?
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to do, because we're in a position to want, everybody right now feels like something feels yucky inside, and I need it to be someone's fault. So I'm waiting for the thing to pounce on. I'm waiting for the thing to blame, right? And it's a human nature to do that. But I'm really in the practice of saying, I don't feel right. Something feels yucky. What can I do? What can I do to free that? And then I said to my friend the other day, I take the news in, I sink a bit emotionally, and then I get up and do something in opposition. So is it a phone call? Is it joining a fundraiser? Is it using my voice, singing to raise money for a certain cause? But I will not, as a quote unquote, person who has some following or can reach some celebrity, whatever that, even a small bit, I will not get on a platform and just start to fight. Mm. That's not the way I'm going to resolve anything. Just to say, you're wrong, I'm right. You're wrong, I'm right. You're wrong. I'm watching it. I'm watching friends, like really respected friends, sabotage each other about certain things. And it's just not working.
Right.
It's not working. The only thing that's going to work is that if we all say, hold up, who are you really? Look inside, remember who you are. In other words, make your own choices, have your own thoughts, stop being swayed, stop being, and because the minute you have an argument with somebody, they'll say, well, that's your new, wherever you're getting your news is wrong.
Right.
Nope. That's not what I'm coming from. I'm coming from the general idea that I've had my entire life and was taught from a very, very early age of love and humility and vulnerability and acceptance. That is not something I'm learning from the news. That is something I'm struggling to keep. That is something that I will fight hard to keep. And the minute you start blaming or we start, or the minute I look at someone else and I start going, then I'm losing it. I'm losing my humility,
Yeah.
So that responsibility right now is huge, but I'm going to choose the way I do it. And I can't listen to what anybody's opinion of that is, because that just means they're not paying attention to themselves.
Right.
They're looking to be mad at somebody for something.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be that person.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the motivation behind starting this podcast, was having longer form conversations with people that hopefully would open people's minds by just hearing a different perspective. And just, you're interested in somebody's work, but then maybe, just by them having a conversation, not like berating you or fighting, because it's so easy to go, especially with social media, that maybe minds could be open a little bit and like get that empathy and compassion, the acceptance, maybe a little bit of that seeps into their thought patterns. Or I think the more we hear stories of people who are not like us and understand that they're real, fully 3-4 dimensional people, it's harder to have that vitriol, and sort of those reactions. And I too have had a hard time kind of reconciling how I was raised and the values with which I was raised with sort of how I see them being maybe not played out currently. Yeah. And that's a tricky thing to navigate, and figuring out how to do that. And I love your answer to how you're doing it on a human level. I think that's really lovely.
Yeah, we have to all start to connect. I mean, connection is so, authentic connection,
Mm-hmm.
It's important, because I think what is easier to do is to, and this is since the beginning of time, when you don't know someone, they cease to be really human to you, or
right.
important, or valuable, right? And so you don't have to think about what you're doing to them. You don't have to feel bad. I think people are much kinder to each other in person, because you have to see their face when you say, F off, mother effer, you know what I mean? But people could just easily type it in and walk away, because there's no pay for for treating people that way. Right. So
right.
The more we know each other, and you don't have to understand, and also you don't have to agree. That's the whole thing. That's the whole wonderful thing about, why this country has the founding ideas that it does. You don't have to agree, but this is going to be a free space,
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it starts to get really confusing to me, because I don't know why they're feeling like it's okay to the other, that thing right now. The other is just, I don't know where in the heart of someone, how I was raised, someone like how that would harden.
Right. It's very tricky to reconcile it, and also not respond with othering other people in response, like trying to find true understanding.
Right.
Yeah. And like, I really want to understand where you're coming from, because I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Yeah. That's what I mean about these conversations. It's not so much to go in and say, I feel this way and you're wrong. It is from a person who does want to understand and want to know you face to face. It is this conversation of, can I ask you about that? Can I ask you about why? Can you tell me what led you here? Right. And do you know, a person that you disagree with? Do you know someone personally? There's just so many thoughts I have about really, truly wanting to get inside why all this is happening. Because I think from most of my life, I've been pretty spoiled. I mean, I was born after as far as war, we had Desert Storm when I was a teenager, or a middle schooler. But other than that, I wasn't in World War II or Vietnam, and so this thing that people my age, it's like, wow, we've never had such a thing. I don't even know what to. For the most part, it's been pretty like, well, but basically, we all want what's best. Basically, we'll do the thing that's right for the whole,
We may disagree on how to get there, but we all want the same thing.
Yeah. And now it seems sort of like that's really severed, and that's heartbreaking. I don't have as much anger as I have bewilderment and heartbreak, at all of it.
So thinking about all this and thinking back on like maybe younger Kelli, if you could go back and kind of give yourself some advice at one point in your life about how to navigate all of these different things, whether it's the world becoming what seems like more chaotic, or juggling a career and family and trying to find the balance that works not only for you, but for the people you love, what advice would you give that younger version of yourself?
Well, obviously I've learned a lot just from life. And I will be learning till the day I die. And I do think humility has a lot to do with that. It's the understanding that I don't know everything, and I never have, and I never will. But the more curious I stay about other people, about other ideas, about other things, the more I will be able to live in this world in a sort of a beautiful, I think it's the walls up that make the discomfort, right? I don't know what that is. I don't want to go about, but if you go beyond the wall of anything, you can start to live in it better. And so I would tell the young person to stay humble, to, always remember your core, kindness. Mm-hmm. And goodness, I'll say that. My mantra is I don't want to do any harm. I really don't. But I get pretty, I can be a mama tiger when I need to defend, right? But I'm not going to go do harm to anyone in this world. I'm not going to take away anyone's love or life or safety. And I would tell that young person, no matter what happens to you, no matter what hardens you, stay open, stay curious, stay humble. And I do feel like in a way I'm doing that. So I'm proud to say that. But sometimes it can feel like it's a worthless endeavor.
Yeah, it's constant work, but that's beautiful. I love that approach.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining me today inside the design studio. I love hearing more about your life and how you're kind of making it all work and juggling all the things, because it's a lot.
Yes, I know we're all holding a lot. So I send warmth and a big hug to everybody and to you. And, let's just keep reaching out to the good people, and all people are good.
All people.
Reaching out to the people who want for all people to be okay.
Yeah. And I think that is hard. And it's the constant work of keeping yourself in a place that's open, even to people who maybe don't feel as open themselves. That can be tricky. Okay. So we're back for a little bit of a bonus with Kelli, because she has a show in Dallas. Tell us what's going on.
That's right. On March 28th, 29th, and 30th.
Okay.
Sutton Foster and I put together a duo lady show, really inspired by the Julie Andrews, Carol Burnett show at Carnegie Hall back in 1962. And it's our stuff. We do it, but we definitely are inspired by them. We even do a couple of numbers that they did in that show.
Yeah.
We're going to bring it to Dallas on those dates, March 28th, 29th, and 30th, with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, Stephen Reinecke conducting. We have an ensemble. And I've invited some students from OCU, my alma mater.
Oh, very cool.
And a student from Texas Tech to come and be in our ensemble. So we're keeping it local, and it's going to be a great, really fun, big concert. And please come out and see us if you come to Dallas.
Oh, I love that. Maybe I'm going to have to make a road trip.
Okay. If you do, say hi.
I will. I'll let you know if I'm able to do it. And then you also have the third season of Gilded Age is coming out.
That's right. I don't think I'm allowed to say when it's coming out, but it won't be too long. And because we're all wrapped and they're editing, and I think it's going to be great.
I'm so excited. I've loved keeping up with the Gilded Age. It feels strangely prescient with the times we're living in.
It certainly does. Isn't that amazing how it is? And there are new things in store for Aurora Fane as well.
Oh, I'm so excited to see where you go. And there you have it. Another episode of Inside the Design Studio in the books. If you enjoyed this exploration of life's design, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And hey, if you're feeling extra generous, leave us a review. Your thoughts fuel our creative journey. I'm David Peck, your design companion on this adventure. Until next time, keep crafting a life that's as captivating as your favorite masterpiece.